Very pleased indeed to be connecting with you. And just greeting everybody. It's always great when the door is opened and people flood in. Just like to acknowledge that there is a team here with me to meet with you. John Atkinson, Florence Lasben, Tui Nguyen, Arnie O'Donoghue, Marlene Shukpath, Charlotte Dufour, Will Ramsey, and Magali Mardi. Reason for acknowledging and inviting them to be visible is just, this is a multi-person exercise. This is our third open public briefing on the Food Systems Summit Dialogues. The briefings have been on the same day of each week, and that's on Wednesdays. They have been at different times so that it's easy for people in different parts of the world to connect. And I'm super grateful to Martin Frick of the Food Systems Summit Secretariat for joining us and offering us an introduction to the Food Systems Summit process. Hopefully this will be helpful to you. My small problem is I can't see Martin Frick on my screen. So just checking, Martin, are you here? All right, so what'll happen is I will communicate, and then when Martin joins, then my colleagues will inform me. Florence is next to me. You can see her nodding, but she's right next to me in the same space. And she will catch my attention. Right. Now, we've had some questions in from some of you, and we also want to give specific recognition to some of you.
David Navarro.
Hello. Prem, were you talking to me?
No, sorry. Sorry. Please go ahead. David.
This is the life with Zoom. Thank you. Repa Kustipia from Gastro Tourism Academy. I want to say hello to you if you're here. We thought you were coming because you have committed to organize an independent Food Systems Summit Dialogue in Indonesia quite soon on the 30th of November. That's great. Somebody else who registered to join is Jiri Ollila. Jiri Ollila. Now, that is a Finnish name because Jiri is from Finland, and he is the appointed National Dialogue Convener for Finland. That's number one. And we're very, very pleased that Finland has done this. We now know of around 30 countries that are looking to move forward with their dialogues, but Finland was the one that got their nomination in first. We'd like to greet colleagues from the FAO, Food and Agriculture, in Vanuatu. That's wonderful. The Pacific Islands have a vital role, very, very important food systems issues, and we're very keen to be connected to them. Colleagues from the Food and Land Use Coalition who are interacting from China, welcome to you. Colleagues from the UN Economic and Social Commission for Western Asia, welcome to you. Colleagues from the United Nations Resident Coordinator's Office in Lao PDR, welcome to you. Colleagues from the European Commission, thank you for joining. And we understand that the former executive director of the World Food Programme, the recent Nobel Prize winning organization, the former executive director may be with us. She's on the list. If you're here, can I give a heartfelt and warm greeting to Ambassador Eartharin Cousin. Very important person in the current circumstances. Lovely that you're here. I think there's real warmth and admiration for you and your leadership. Thank you. I've got a message here saying, hi, there's no translation in French. Ambassador Idriss, that is a reality this time. On this particular briefing, on est toujours en anglais. Mais on change le système un peu après et aussi on peut avoir un appel exclusivement avec vous, si vous voudrez. So Idriss, thank you very much for telling us. And please stay in contact with us and we will make certain that we can find a way to communicate with you in French. Thank you for the message on the chat. I've just seen that. Merci beaucoup. So here I go, just bringing you up to date on the Food Systems Summit dialogues. I'm going to talk about the dialogues and I'm going to put them into the wider program for the Food Systems Summit. So because my colleague Martin is not here, I will just briefly talk about the summit at the beginning. I want you to communicate with us through the chat box. I will not be talking much after the 1500 hours here in Switzerland. That's the top of the hour, we'll say. And so that will leave us with half an hour for discourse between us. We're recording this, and that's useful. If you've got any friends who want to see it, tell them that there's a recording available. If you need to see it again, you'll get a recording. And also this is going out live on Facebook, thanks to the ingenuity of our communications lead, Tui Nguyen. But the recording will be available both on the Food Systems Summit website and on the website that we use for the dialogues, which I'll tell you about in a minute. So the Food Systems Summit has been convened by the Secretary General of the United Nations. It's his summit. And who better to tell us about the summit than the Deputy Special Envoy for the summit, Martin Frick. Martin, if you're okay, this is now the time when you perhaps give a 5-minute introduction to the summit. Over to you, Martin.
Thank you very much, David, and apologies for coming in late. There was another ministerial that was running over time. Well, David, you already said it. This is a summit which is convened by the Secretary General, and it's convened by the Secretary General because there's a recognition that food systems are the central piece in the achievement of both the Sustainable Development Goals, but also the goals of the Paris Agreement. And we have been speaking in a fragmented way about the different aspects, forests, agriculture, fisheries, food waste, but it's really necessary to look at all these issues as what it is, as a system. And it's a supremely important system, as we know that, for example, short to 40%, maybe 36, 37% of global emissions are caused by food system. If you take a broad definition, including cooling, transport, plastic packaging, what have you, or 80% of biodiversity is lost in connection with agriculture. Again, more than 80% of our water is being used in agriculture. So it makes a lot of sense to look into these issues. But let's look at the social side. We have 3 billion people who are not able to afford the nutritious food they would need inter alia for staying healthy in a COVID crisis. We got 1 billion people whose livelihood depends directly from food production, and 2 billion people who somehow depend on people working in the food production for their livelihoods. So in achieving this summit, the Secretary General has given a mandate which is quite unusual, because he has said this is supposed to be a people summit and a solution summit. And so when we are talking about a summit, immediately people think of one moment in time when heads of state and government will be in one room, or virtually in one room. We don't know yet. But it really is a 1-year engagement process built around the country engagement. And this briefing is about the engagement we will have in every single member state of the United Nations. And it's also about a global discussion that we are structuring in 5 action tracks, which are about access to safe and nutritious food, change to sustainable consumption, nature positive production, livelihoods, and resilience. And I can only encourage you, and I will put it in the chat, to follow the summit on social media, because as we do this public briefing on the country level dialogues, there are also public briefings on the different action tracks. I think the key message is here, this is a summit about you, and this is a summit with you. And no matter where you are, what your job is, what your role, we want to hear from you. We want to be engaged with you. We are very much building on civil society participation, and we have taken unusual steps to ensure that our action tracks are not co-led by countries, as you would have had that in other UN processes, but really by experts. The teams they are working with are as diverse as global society is. And David will explain to you, when we are coming to countries, we are really pushing very hard to have an all of society representation. And we even give individuals the possibility to organize independent dialogues to support the general discussion on a smaller local regional country level. Maybe I'll leave it here, David. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity. And back to you. I will stay on a bit longer in case there are questions. Thank you very much indeed.
Well, Martin, thank you. I've worked with Martin Frick for a long time, when he was in FAO, then when he was working for the Secretariat of the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change. And now here he is working in the summit. And he really is somebody who is a delight to work with, because I think he, like me, has a basic belief that if you can help people to connect, then that's the way to make it possible for change to happen. We're less likely to change if we stay insulated in our own private spaces. Please do use the chat to connect with each other. I see some of you are already doing it. I want every single moment in preparation for this summit to be made available for you, to be able to make connections, and to do it in a way that's curious, to do it in a way that's daring, and to do it in a way that helps you to grow. Because that's really what our dialogue system is all about, connecting and growing. So I think everybody knows that food systems must become more sustainable and more equitable if we are to have a world that does change as set out in the Sustainable Development Agenda. A world where all 17 Sustainable Development Goals are realized. Food is key. And I'm really proud to be able to share with you that for me, that Sustainable Development Agenda is a hugely meaningful intergovernmental agreement. And I'm proud that this summit has been put into the context of that Sustainable Development Agenda, and that the Secretary General wants us to work for food and food systems to really contribute to all 17 SDGs. But we know that food systems are complex. They vary between locations. They involve multiple stakeholders, and that these stakeholders have very different interests, very different perspectives, and that they approach food with quite different values as well. And so if one's trying to encourage groups of stakeholders who are working within interconnected systems to change, to shift, to function differently, simply telling them what's good, right, true, and all that stuff, it'll be interesting and they'll listen, but it won't necessarily lead to change. People don't change what they do simply because they're told that something else is better. And anyway, there's always debates about science, and there are different scientific disciplines that are brought to play: environmental science, social science, managerial science, economic science, and of course, agricultural science, health science. And depending on which scientific discipline you use, your system will have differing characteristics. So we have to, when we're looking to change systems, we have to provide an environment within which it's possible for many different perspectives to coexist simultaneously, and for different groups of people to be made welcome. And that's why we've been working for the last few years on the use of dialogue as a way to make systems change more feasible. The dialogue providing an opportunity for very different stakeholders to examine issues and to connect with each other quite deeply and to understand issues from each other's perspectives, and to, even in an experimental way, to try to look at life through the perspectives of others, and then to be ready to think about making change, especially if they find that what they hear from the others sounds as though it aligns with their own interests. So a dialogue is a place to connect, to meet, to explore, to build new alliances, and to be ready to think about change. And we've seen that happen. Last 2.5 years, my colleagues and I have organized more than 40 dialogues around the world. And we've seen how amazingly inspiring they can be, because they create an environment within which change becomes possible. You've got to have diversity. Otherwise, there's no stimulus to change. You've got to have an environment of trust, an environment that's safe. You've got to have good facilitation so that people are all enabled to take part. But then things can change, especially if the dialogue is repeated at intervals. And we've seen that. And it's really powerful. Dr. Kalibata, the special envoy, Martin Frick, the deputy special envoy, they've both taken part in some of these dialogues. And I think they felt that there's something strong and energizing through the dialogue format. And that's why we were asked by Dr. Kalibata to create a support system for dialogues to take place in advance of the summit. It's a standardized approach that we've developed. And we describe different functions in the dialogue. I'll share them with you. The first one is convening the dialogue. That's organizing the whole thing. The second function is curating an individual dialogue moment when you perhaps have got around 100 people involved. The curator is the organizer of the event. And then you break down your big group into smaller groups of about 8 to 10 people. And there you need a facilitator, somebody who gets those 8 to 10 people to talk, to share, and to be comfortable doing so. And that convener, the big organizer, the curator, the one who's the master of ceremonies for an individual dialogue, and then the facilitator who's dealing with the small group. That's a super important division of roles. And that's at the heart of our standardized approach. Now, I want to talk to you about 3 types of slides that we have, 3 types of dialogues that we've been developing. The first is what we call the member state dialogues. These are dialogues that are led by governments, and they are designed to shape pathways to sustainable national food systems in ways that build on existing plans in the country. There's a 3-stage progression. Hector, your microphone's off. Thank you. I tell people if I know their microphone's off in case they say something they don't want me to hear. So the member state dialogues are about 3 stages of work to lead to a pathway towards sustainable national food systems. Remember that. 3 stages in the national dialogues and a pathway that can be useful for the succeeding 10 years because you're focusing on the pathway to sustainable food systems by 2030. And you're building on existing plans. You're building on what's already been done in the country. So it's in a country, 3 stages, moving towards sustainability by 2030. And these are going to be encouraged in 193 member states of the UN system, 193 countries. Some countries will say, we can't do 3 stages. We've got to squeeze it down to 1 or 2. Some countries will say, we'd like to team up with others. For example, they might be islands in the Pacific or islands in the Caribbean and prefer to do it as a group. Some countries may say, we've got neighbors, we want to work with our neighbors because they have a similar agricultural system to ourselves. That's fine. We're not trying to instruct anybody, we're just offering an approach. And the Deputy Secretary General of the UN has written to all the UN member states, inviting them to do these dialogues and to nominate a national dialogues convener. That person would be responsible for organizing the 3 stages of dialogues. And that person will be responsible for filing the report afterwards, what's called the feedback form, which is then used as the basis for working out what happened in the dialogue. Now, there's a second kind of dialogue I want to tell you about. It's called the independent dialogues. These are convened by individuals or by organizations independently of the national government, independently of any authority. And they too can connect with the summit through a feedback mechanism. But basically, they're highly adaptable. And they're an opportunity for all citizens to engage directly in proposing the future of food systems and for exploring new ways of working together. Like the member state dialogues, The independent dialogues should follow the principles of engagement of the Food Systems Summit. And like the member state dialogues, they'll come out with proposals, including even some statements of intentions and commitments. The third type of dialogue is called the Global Summit Dialogue. This is a dialogue that takes place at the same time as big international meetings. And the first one is on December the 1st, as part of the Sustainable Food Systems Conference being organized by Switzerland, United Nations Environment Programme, Costa Rica, HIVOS, WWF International. And that's the first, but there will be several more of these global dialogues. If you want to know more about the dialogues, then please go to a website. It's called summitdialogues.org. Summit Dialogues, all one word, .org. This is set up specially for you. If you want to become a convener of an independent dialogue, that's where you register your interest. If you want to know more about the dialogue system, that's where you ask to be on the mailing list for the newsletter. If you want to actually participate in the national or member state dialogue program, and you've been nominated as the convener by your government, that's where you form a direct relationship with myself and my team. That's the entry point. You'll find out when you get on there that there are two kinds of dialogues, two approaches to dialogues now that we're working on. Because of COVID, we've got a virtual dialogue system that we're working with. And if you are able to have meetings, then there's the in-person dialogue system. You'll see that when there is a dialogue, it's divided into two elements. The session, the time for discussion, the session for discussion, and the session for summarizing the results of discussions. You'll find out that these dialogues normally last between 2.5 and 4 hours, and that the discussion session is at least 60 minutes. You'll find out that we can have quite a range of participants, but that usually we like to not have more than around 60 or perhaps 80. You'll find out that our discussion groups for the actual discussion part of the dialogue, maximum of 10 people, including somebody who facilitates the discussion. And you'll find out that we really do encourage dialogues to take place at intervals, what we call a progression of dialogue. We've got a strong training program for the conveners of dialogues. It started already. We did our first training session yesterday. We'll be doing them at regular intervals, right through from now into next year. You'll find out that as you do this training program, you get an opportunity to connect with other conveners. And that in the training, if you are a convener, you can learn about what kind of discussion topics to bring into your dialogues. And you can also learn how your outcomes of your dialogues will be synthesized into a broader report that is made available to the different parts of the summit preparation. There's a close link between these country dialogues and the action tracks that Martin Frick described at the beginning. There's a close link between the dialogues and the scientific group. And in fact, these dialogues, whether they're in the countries or globally or independent, are all about connecting the different parts of the summit. You'll find as you get more into this that we will do everything we can to help those of you who want to take the dialogues forward to actually not only do it, but to enjoy it and to keep working in the dialogue format after you've done it, if you want to. And I hope you'll find that through this approach, we will be able together to produce some really interesting syntheses that can be shared with others. So we've had a couple of questions that came in beforehand, plus we've had some questions that have come in on the chat. And my colleague Florence has kindly given them to me, so I have them here in my hand. Those of you who feel you need to speak, if you just mention that you want to in the chat, we can do it that way. But probably to try to keep us moving forward, unless you really tell me you want to speak, I will tell you what you've written and feedback. And so Christopher Samuel of an outfit called CSAM Communications and Public Affairs has sent two questions, and I'll answer them quickly. First, besides engaging on Food System Summit social media for awareness, what can consumers and farmers do to help transform the food system? Well, I'll tell you straight away, Christopher, that we have seen all over the world that if farmers are involved in food systems dialogues as full participants, it makes a huge difference. The farmers need to be there. The fishers need to be there. The livestock keepers need to be there. The forest dwellers need to be there. The food processors need to be there. Those who are involved in distribution need to be there. The food retailers, the marketeers, the people who deal with food waste. We want all the actors from within food systems to be there. We want representatives of consumers to be there, poor and rich, highly educated or less highly educated, people from different ethnic groups. That's why the dialogues exist, so that farmers and consumers and processors and waste managers, regulators, and those who set policy can all participate in the debate and discussion about the future of food systems. So Christopher, why don't you think about becoming a convener and using your own reach to bring together different actors and have dialogues about the future of food? Why don't you think about writing it up and then submitting it onto the website, summitdialogues.org? It'd be great. You also ask, how is the Food Systems Summit ensuring that the dialogue participants and decision makers are truly representative of the world's population by geography and race? Well, Christopher, we are trying to get dialogues in every country. We're encouraging dialogues even spread into countries in stage 2 of the country dialogues, so that at the subnational level, they're also done. We're trying to make sure that there is full diversity of participation in dialogues. I can't promise that we will succeed everywhere. We don't give instructions to people for them to follow to the letter. We offer suggestions and ideas, and we connect with them and we talk it through with them. But I think you will see that in the coming weeks and months, there's going to be a huge diversity by geography, by race, by occupation, by wealth group in these dialogues on the future of food systems. And it would be great, again, Christopher, if you can stay close to us. The Summit Dialogues website is going to contain a lot of information that you can use. So there's a couple of questions. I don't know who asked, but that's all right. It doesn't matter. All right. Florence tells me that several people had the same question. So here's a bundle of questions coming in a couple. Is there a date for the Food Systems Summit? Answer, September 2021. But this is a special summit. It's got two parts. The high-level segment in New York is dated September 2021. It'll be short, and for heads of state and government and other leaders. But there's going to be a meeting before that, the pre-summit, and that's going to be in Rome, and it'll be longer. That'll be in July 2021. So stand by for Rome, July, New York, September. And of course, we hope it'll happen. I've just seen a question has come in from a very important guest. I hadn't seen you here. A big shout out. Could I please say how proud and delighted I am to see that Tanawat Tien Sin, the chair of the Committee on World Food Security and the ambassador of Thailand to the United Nations in Rome, is here with us. I see you asking a question, and I'll make sure to answer that in a second. Another question that's come through: when are the action tracks briefings going to take place? I can't answer. I don't have that information to hand. If I do, I will. And if Martin, if you're on, if you could just unmute and shout out that you're on, that would be great. Otherwise, it'll be for us to find a way to inform you when the action tracks are doing public briefings. Now I'll go to the CFS chair's question. How can our farmers, producers, and consumers who speak their local languages participate in the dialogues? Well, Your Excellency, I want to give you my image of what food systems dialogues in Thailand could look like. Let us imagine that the government of Thailand has nominated somebody to be the convener. We'll call that person the convener. The convener will meet with a number of senior personnel from government and also perhaps from the United Nations, from farmers' organizations, from civil society, from universities, from business. And they will quickly organize the first stage of the three-stage dialogues to start exploring what's going to be happening in Thailand. In that discussion, there will be agreement that there will be some of the dialogues that take place in Thailand in the Thai language, and that will mean that farmers, producers, and consumers can come together. And perhaps they will speak dialects. They will come from the north, from Chiang Mai or from Khon Kaen, and they will speak local dialects from there, or they will come from other parts of the country. But that's fine. Because in stage 2 of the dialogues, you encourage diverse stakeholders to come together in different regions of the country, which means they can work in their own languages. You advise them to come together, perhaps bringing different stakeholders together from different regions. So then they would talk in Thai, perhaps. But there's no need to convert any of it into one of the UN languages until the outcome of any dialogue is posted onto the website. And then you do a summary feedback. Let's say in Thailand, it might be in English. So you do a summary feedback in English and it's posted onto the website. But the actual dialogue itself is done either in Thai or in a local language. And that's the system. This is specifically designed so that people can come in and do dialogue in their local languages. And obviously there has to be some translation as you come from the subnational dialogues in stage 2 to the national dialogues. And then you pull it all together in stage 3. But that's where the translation occurs. The dialogue itself can be in local language. And in fact, in some places, they've done dialogue using rich pictures and visual representation. In some places, they've done dialogues using storytelling. And that's okay. The actual medium used for the dialogue can vary enormously. That's absolutely how it should be. Another question, how can we encourage more agroecology extension that will allow the rural poor to feed themselves well in ways that decrease climate change, increase biodiversity, conserve water? Well, one of the things that I hope will come out of the summit is a commitment to more extension work that addresses these different facets of food systems. Because I quite agree with the person who asked that question. You need to be looking at all the dimensions of food systems if it's going to get right. Here's Philip Buck, who says, here in Austria, our government person for the Food Systems Summit says that no national dialogues are planned at all. How common is this situation? How many countries are really actively taking part in the process? Philip, we're at the beginning. And I'm hearing of a lot of interest in the dialogues from 35 countries. My ambition is that at least 150 countries out of the 193 countries in the UN system do it. I'm absolutely certain that the European Union is going to give a priority to dialogues. I know certain countries will say no, either because they've already done some kind of exercise to look at their food systems policies, or because they're really busy on other things. But if a national government says no, it's perfectly possible that others in Austria can themselves get ahead and do dialogues. They can do independent dialogues, and they can network together, and you can get several organizations involved in independent dialogues. They won't be called the Austrian member state dialogues, but they will be called independent dialogues undertaken in Austria. And they will have their feedback on the website, and people will be able to see it. So there will be opportunities for people in Austria to do food systems dialogues, even if there's not a member state dialogue. But I think that some member states are not sure whether they have got the resources to organize dialogues now, November 25, 2020. But perhaps they might have a different position by January. They might have thought about it, discussed it with others, found out that it's not so difficult to do. And so they could perhaps organize their dialogue starting a bit later. There's no problem if dialogues start later than the hoped for start time of November, December. So right now, I can tell you, Philip, I am really gratified by the number of people who tell me that their national governments are really thinking hard about appointing a dialogue convener. I'm hearing in some cases of countries coming together and doing it in groups, and that's great. I heard the other day that in some parts of Africa, there may be groups of countries doing dialogues. There may be countries doing dialogues separately, and that there may be various different formats for the dialogues. That's fine too. So the answer to your question is, to my knowledge, something that started just the beginning of November, at least 35 countries actively considering how they want to be engaged. Thank you, Philip. Don't hesitate to stay in touch. We enjoy working with you. How can I join the global dialogue? From several people. Well, these dialogues are being organized by the Special Envoy for the Food Systems Summit. She's doing them upon invitation at the moment. And the first one has proved to be immensely popular, and it's full. We can't run these dialogues with more than about 100, and we've accepted well over 100 to come. And why is it like that? some of you will wonder, well, I want to be in a dialogue. Why are they being so fussy? And the answer is the participation in the discussion groups, or when we're physically together at the dialogue table, the participation is very carefully worked out. We always try to make sure there's a real diversity of people around the table. And we offer them a discussion topic that is as carefully as possible matched to the interests of the people in the discussion group. It's not like a conference where you can just turn up and sit in the back in the dark. Because these are so active, because everybody is involved, there really are, they're very, very intense moments, quite noisy. We have to be quite careful. So to those of you who want to join one of the Special Envoys Global Dialogues, we'll tell you when more opportunities come up, but this one is full. Could I just say one other thing? If any of you want to organize a global dialogue, you can do so. You do it as an independent dialogue. You invite who you want. But just bear in mind that there are principles of engagement in the summit, and that if you really want the feedback from your dialogue to be taken seriously, you've got to respect these principles. They matter. And that brings me to the next question. Gosh, I hope you're okay with me just doing a monologue. If anybody wants to stop me, just wave your hands or unmute your mic. So a colleague says, once the reports are submitted by the different dialogue conveners, how will they be compiled and presented? Well, that's where my colleague John has got a tough job. I'm not going to put him on the spot, but he is the person who is helping our group, or working with the Food System Summit Secretariat, on the methodology for synthesis of the outcomes of the different dialogues. The first thing to say is that when you go on the Summit Dialogues website, you'll find a copy of the feedback form. And you'll see that it's quite a structured feedback form. It's got little sections that you fill in, some boxes that you have to tick. That's on purpose, because the idea is that by structuring the feedback form, we make it easy to then pick out bits of your feedback from a dialogue that are relevant to the different action tracks, or that are relevant to other levers for change, or that are relevant to different geographical areas. And in that way, using those check marks, we can quite quickly identify the feedback forms that have relevance to particular categories of analysis, like the action tracks. We then have a team of people whose job it is to extract from your feedback forms bundles of material that aligns with particular themes that are coming out from the full range of dialogues. We did that for dialogues over the last 2 years to identify what we call red thread themes that came out of it. And we will do it again for these. And as the themes emerge, we, in a very public way, share the synthesis of the themes on the website, make it available to the action tracks, and then share it with everybody who wants. So the syntheses that we do are publicly available. Now, in addition, because these dialogue feedback forms are on a website and can be publicly consulted, anybody else who wants can do their own synthesis. I see John nodding. I'm glad I got that one right. This is a really important thing to say to you all. The material is publicly available. you are able to do your own syntheses. What is the timeline for independent dialogues? What is the deadline to send feedback from your dialogue? What is the latest we can? So the pre-summit, as I said before, is in July next year. We are maintaining openness for feedback from dialogues right through till early June. Don't wait too long after a dialogue before you send your feedback. Try to get the feedback in within 3 weeks. That's because if you wait too long, I promise you, it'll be very hard to write the feedback. And we want to get the information from the dialogues quickly. It just makes life much easier for us. So 3 weeks after, please, absolutely maximum. And the independent dialogues can be done from now. On the website at the moment, on Summit Dialogues, there are announcements, I think, of 2, but I'm expecting that to build up quite quickly. If you're doing an independent dialogue in a country, and there's a member state dialogue underway as well, let's say, for example, in Finland, somebody's doing an independent dialogue, please, as a matter of decency, tell the national dialogue convener that you're doing the independent dialogue and share your feedback with the national dialogue convener. We want to create crosswalks between independent dialogues and the national dialogue conveners. So again, to His Excellency Ambassador Idriss, il a posé une question en français. Mais moi, je fais la réponse, je pense en anglais. Mais on est contact, on va avoir un contact avec vous-même pour explorer autre chose, si vous voulez. So Mr. Ambassador says, what are the deadlines for each phase? So the member state dialogue stage 1, we are hoping to have most of the stage 1s done by the end of 2020. Member state dialogue stage 2, which includes subnational, we hope to have most of those done between January and April 2021. Member States dialogue stage 3, we hope to have those in May, leading to finishing by early June. Independent dialogues, please try to have them between now and early June. Global dialogues, they're being organized by Dr. Kalibata, the special envoy, and they will have their own rhythm, but they're happening at intervals between December the 1st and the beginning of June. From several people, who are the member state conveners and how can we find the list? The information about member state conveners will appear on the Summit Dialogues website. The procedure is as follows. National government sends an official message to the Summit Secretariat nominating the National Dialogue convener. That's very important. The person must be nominated if they are a National Dialogue convener. The Summit Secretariat contacts the National Dialogue convener, who then registers herself or himself on the Summit Dialogues website. Once she or he is registered, then if she or he agrees, then information about the identity is available off the website. Information about the National Dialogue convener is also available from the national government of the concerned country. As I say, at the moment, I think we have 3 National Dialogue conveners who've been nominated. 2 are confirmed, 1 is pending. What does happen when government officials are not willing to dialogue and listen to other opinions to make change and improve? That's why we have the independent dialogues. Simple. If you can't get stuff in through the government, have a go through the independent dialogues. And it is our experience that over time, people change. Just because you get perhaps a bit of resistance at one point, if that's what you're describing, it doesn't stay like that forever. Having been a government official, I can tell you, you change. I changed, and I still change. Is there a deadline for developing an independent dialogue? Do it as quickly as you can. Sophie Quist, we organise dialogues already in Scotland between farmers on food and climate. Main purpose is to build relationships. Can we connect by registering as an independent dialogue? What is the added value beyond sending feedback? Well, we hope that you will be able to connect with others doing dialogues in Scotland or doing dialogues elsewhere. Connecting is very valuable. We hope that you will feel good at being part of a movement of dialogue. We hope that it will be much more value, but it will be very much something that will evolve. I can't promise. But thank you for telling us, and great that you're doing the dialogues. I personally have done one food systems dialogue event in Scotland, and I've been very inspired by what's happening in that country. How can we join the trainings? Well, there are 3 types of trainings. Trainings for conveners from member states, trainings for conveners of independent dialogues, trainings for curators and facilitators of all dialogues. Please go to summitdialogues.org. Click on the zone that's headed Take Part and just see what happens. And if you get any trouble, write to us and comment. The Tanawat Tien Sin, His Excellency, the Permanent Representative of Thailand. What are the key outcomes that we're expecting from the dialogues? Are there guiding questions to facilitate the dialogues? The key outcomes from the member state dialogues are: 1, a pathway to sustainable food systems by 2030. Number 2, statements of intention and commitment from participants. Key outcomes from independent dialogues are suggestions for ways in which food systems can be made more sustainable, directed to different actors. Are the guiding questions there? Yes. There are guiding questions inside the manual for conveners, which is on the Summit Dialogues website. There will also be material on guiding questions in the handbook on member state dialogues that's appearing tonight on the Summit Dialogues website, and the handbook for independent dialogues that appears in a month. And I want to say to you, actually no, it's the handbook for independent dialogues that appears in 2 weeks. I want to say to you very clearly, all the materials are being translated into all 6 UN languages. And whilst they're available in English at the moment, they will be available in other languages by next month. How many independent dialogues would you recommend doing within a country? Answer: as many as you want. The whole idea here is we get dialogue happening in households, dialogue in schools, dialogue in universities, dialogue in local organizations and community groups, dialogue in cities, dialogue in states, dialogue in regions, dialogue among vast groups of stakeholders, dialogue that's then in the country, dialogue in multiple countries, in some regional communities, dialogue everywhere. That's the only way you get systems change, in our experience. Everybody, thank you very much indeed. Thanks to the team. Thanks to all of you. Thanks for sticking on the call. Stay in touch. Use the contact on the Dialogue, Summit Dialogues website. Thank you for being 144 people at the end of the briefing. We look forward to staying connected with you. This is a community. It's a community of people who are moving, driven by the same concerns for sustainability and equity, but really wanting food systems that serve all the people of our planet. Thank you very much indeed for being part of us and for working with us. We will respond in a way that is as supportive as we can be, and we very much value your comments. Bye-bye.